Volodymyr Zelensky has signed a bill that changes the subordination of the National Anti-Corruption Center and the Specialized Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office. This is evidenced by the website of the Verkhovna Rada. And late at night, Zelensky announced that he had met with the heads of anti-corruption agencies, the head of the Security Service of Ukraine, and the Prosecutor General. The president named the main goal of the legislative changes as the pursuit of justice and cleansing institutions of Russian influence.
The anti-corruption infrastructure will operate only without Russian influence. Everything needs to be cleansed of this. And there must be more justice. Of course, NABU and SAP will continue to work, and it is important that the Prosecutor General is determined to ensure that in Ukraine, the inevitability of punishment for those who break the law is truly enforced. And this is exactly what Ukraine really needs.
So, the Rada passed a bill that makes NABU and SAP subordinate to the Prosecutor General's office. 263 members of parliament voted in favor. After the president signed the law, the Prosecutor General received new powers. He gained full access to the materials of any criminal proceeding and can also independently determine the jurisdiction in NABU cases, transfer any case from NABU to another pretrial investigation body, issue suspicions to top officials, and decide whether to close cases against the highest-ranking officials. Also, the prosecutors of the SAPO will be subordinate to the Prosecutor General in their procedural decisions. We will tell you about the Prosecutor General's own reaction a bit later. And now, how the law was passed in Parliament. TSN correspondent Ira Bondarenko has more details.
I will put these amendments to a vote one by one. Surrounded by opposition deputies, the Speaker of Parliament brings amendments to the Criminal Procedure Code up for consideration. A blocked rostrum and presidium do not hinder parliamentary lawmaking. This amendment, in the version in which it participated, please vote. Representatives of the European Solidarity and Holos factions call the bill a disruption of the independence of the SAPO and NABU. Anastasia Radina, head of the Parliamentary Anti-Corruption Committee, shares the same opinion.
Colleagues, this bill was registered on January 16th. This has already happened in the history of the Ukrainian parliament, and it ended very, very, very badly. I ask you, colleagues, not to deceive yourselves or the people by saying you're voting for some mild strengthening of the Prosecutor General and not the dismantling of NABU and SAPO. No, colleagues, what you're voting for now is the dismantling of the anti-corruption infrastructure.
The opposition emphasizes that the amendments to the document were introduced just a few minutes before the start of the session, which is a violation of the regulations. For not following the rules, there is an attempt to remove Ruslan Stefanchuk from his duties. But the idea didn't get enough votes, just like the numerous attempts to block the consideration of the bill. The authors of the amendments, including Serhiy Lysenko, are convinced that the expansion of the Prosecutor General's powers is stipulated in the Constitution.
None of these amendments concern the so-called destruction of the anti-corruption infrastructure. We are simply returning to the constitutional framework.
A few minutes later, the adopted law is signed by the Speaker and sent to the President. If the head of state signs the document, the Prosecutor General will gain the right to take cases away from anti-corruption prosecutors and transfer them to other prosecutors, independently determine jurisdiction, sign indictments against top officials, or, at their own discretion, close anti-corruption investigations. The bill was voted on against the backdrop of numerous searches carried out by the security service among NABU employees. 2 bureau employees were detained, allegedly on suspicion of collaborating with Russian special services.
The only reason this bill appeared is because of active investigations into the closest circle of the presidential office leadership.
The heads of NABU and SAP held an urgent joint briefing and called on President Zelensky to veto the changes to the Criminal Procedure Code adopted by the Rada, which turned both anti-corruption institutions into mere window dressing.
This is the end of the independent work of the two anti-corruption institutions.
Right now, the President of Ukraine's signature is still needed, and we are asking not to sign this bill, but to return it with an appropriate veto. NABU was created, and SAP as well, as a body with exclusive jurisdiction over fighting high-level corruption, with all guarantees of independence. And this is a condition, among other things, for our progress towards Europe.
Opposition deputies are ready to challenge the adopted law in court. Ira Bondarenko, Alexei Izavenko, TSN 1+1 Marathon United News.
The new law was commented on by the Prosecutor General and the head of the Security Service of Ukraine. Ruslin Kravchenko emphasizes the Special Anti-Corruption Prosecutor's Office was already a department within the Prosecutor General's office. The new changes stipulate that the Prosecutor General's office and the SAPO will become a single system, but they will handle different cases, and each will have its own proceedings. SBU head Basil Maliak, on the other hand, expressed the opinion that SAPO prosecutors will not allow themselves to be pressured, and any possible new powers will become an additional responsibility for the Prosecutor General.
For them, it's very.
SAPO, according to the law of Ukraine on the prosecutor's office, both was and remains a department. It was and still is. And we will be one family. They will work on their own criminal cases, and we will work on ours. And together, we will help each other.
As for the issue of MPs, it's better to ask them directly. That would be the right and logical thing to do. They'll be able to provide some details. But as far as I understand and can answer this question, it's simply a return to the Constitution. Both the SAPO and NABU have not been dissolved. They continue to exist and continue to work effectively.
Independently. The first mass protest since the start of the full-scale invasion. People took to the streets, protesting against the law which, in their opinion, undermines the autonomy of NABU and SAPO. Protests took place, in particular, in Kyiv, Lviv, Dnipro, and Odesa. In the capital, protesters even broke the curfew. A report by TSN correspondents.
Kyiv residents start gathering closer to 8 in the evening. The crowd is mostly made up of young people. On the square near what is now the most popular theater in Ukraine, the Franco Theater, there are scenes that are anything but theatrical tonight. Today, people have come out here with political demands for the authorities. The atmosphere is upbeat, people are smiling, making homemade posters right on the street, and competing in creativity.
I was outraged by the bill that proposes giving the Prosecutor General control over NABU and SAP, and this makes me feel a certain anxiety.
Of course, there may be questions about the work of both NABU and SAP, but that shouldn't be a reason to hand them over to the Prosecutor General's office.
Among the participants in the protests are military personnel, including Alexander Turin, a veteran of the Russian-Ukrainian war.
It's important not to stay silent right now, because in our country, the people are the power. Well, I think we just need to shout about this, and that's why I'm here.
The protesters chose the square near the Ivan Franko Theater because it is located not far from the president's office. A few police officers are present, but they are not interfering with the protest. No to corruption in the government. No to corruption in the government. Hands off NABU. Hands off NABU. They are also recalling slogans from 20 years ago. There are many of us. You can't defeat us. At the same time, about 500 people are gathering in Lviv. In the square in front of the Shevchenko monument, they are demanding to preserve the independence of anti-corruption agencies. 50 people are coming out to protest in Odesa. On Deribasiska Street, they are demanding a veto on a law which, in their opinion, could hinder Ukraine's path to the European Union.
With such a shameful price, in just 5 hours, what we've been building for more than 10 years can be undone in 5 hours. That's not normal.
I assume that we have Russian agents of influence, and those who support or somehow cooperate with them everywhere. That's our misfortune. But we need to cleanse ourselves, not destroyed because of it.
Despite the thunderstorm and downpour, people are protesting in Dnipro as well. People are marching in a column toward European Square, right in the city center.
For me, this draft law is something outrageous and very unpleasant, which could, let's say, have harmful, bad consequences. Yes, they did work. No, not the way we would have liked, but they didn't work.
Meanwhile, in Kyiv, the protesters are holding out hope until the very end that the president will still veto it. That didn't happen. Train. Closer to midnight, most people disperse. However, several dozen people stay to spend the night outdoors. Together till the end. Together till the end. Dmytro Ferdak, Anastasia Naverna, Marichka Kuzek, and Alina Chernyayeva, TSN, 1+1, Marathon, United News.
We won't go against the law. The tests in Ukraine have made headlines in the world press. For example, the Wall Street Journal highlights in its subheading the words about the centralization of power around the president. Politico writes that these are the first protests since the start of the full-scale Russian war that have taken place simultaneously in a number of Ukrainian cities, including Kyiv, Lviv, Odesa, and Dnipro. And it recalls that the European Commission has expressed concern about the law, which, in the institution's opinion, strips anti-corruption bodies of their independence. The New York Times also points out that this is the first outrage over Zelensky's actions in the years of the major war. The British Telegraph writes that the protesters are demanding not to turn Ukraine into Russia.